Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Now this is going to be a two-part video series where I'm going to share some helpful strategies for how to achieve success on the TOEFL exam. Now the first thing I'm going to do is focus on how to maximize your study habits for the TOEFL so that you can achieve your best score. Now getting the best results on the TOEFL will require you to practice strong study habits for weeks or even months before you go take the test. So in this video, I'm going to look at 5 strategies that can help you do just that. So the first strategy that I'm going to talk about today is you need to familiarize yourself with the test format. So one reason why a lot of people don't achieve their best on the TOEFL is because they don't take the time to really know or understand what to expect from the test before they actually take it. So it's crucial to familiarize yourself with the test format and the expectations for scoring so that you don't have to stress out needlessly on the day of the exam. So one way to do that is to visit the ETS, Educational Testing Service, visit their website and other TOEFL study sites to familiarize yourself with each section of the exam and what will be expected of you. So you then need to figure out which version of the TOEFL you will actually be taking. Now, there are 2 official versions of the TOEFL. 90% of them are now in what is called the IBT format, which is the internet-based test format. Although a very small number of testing centers will still use the older paper-based test. So make sure that you understand which type of TOEFL test you're actually going to be taking. There are slight differences between the paper-based test and the IBT, so make sure that you know which one you're taking and then prepare accordingly. So the second strategy that I'm going to talk about today is taking massive action by taking lots of practice tests. Okay, so if there's one thing that there is absolutely no shortage of on the internet, it's TOEFL practice tests. And this is the best way to understand both the level of difficulty and the types of questions that you will be facing on the exam. So by taking practice versions of the test, you will be well prepared to step into the testing center and achieve your best score. So one thing that you can do is, some tests will be free to take. They won't charge anything, but others will cost a small fee. Usually it's no more than $20 to take the practice test. I think that's the most expensive one that I've seen. But the experience is well worth the cost. So if you do come across a practice TOEFL test that costs money, it is worth it to take it because you will be very, very familiar with what is going to be on the test. You will know what to expect. So another thing that I recommend is to practice with as many tests as you can so that you become as familiar as possible with all of the question types and all of the content types. So the third strategy that I'm going to mention today is to study academic English before you take the exam. Now, probably the biggest concern that I have from people I work with is that they are unsure about how to handle the complicated, specific purpose vocabulary on many TOEFL sections. So the TOEFL often covers areas such as science, business, and other academic research. So many of those sections will utilize vocabulary that you may not have covered in your formal English class. So this is why it's important to take some extra time out of your day or out of your week to put in the effort outside of class to study more academic vocabulary before the exam takes place. Now, you can do this by reading more science-based textbooks, business journals, such as Harvard Business Review, and academic research articles. Some great resources for this are actually the New York Times Science Times subsection, which comes out, I believe, once a week. I think it's on Tuesday, but I'm not entirely sure. There's also academic paper portals such as Arxiv, arxiv.org is a great site for academic research papers that you can use. So when you're reading those articles, be sure to take a highlighter and highlight the words and phrases that you don't understand, and then you can look up their meanings in a dictionary or on a vocabulary app that you might have. So that's a great way to feel a lot more confident about going into the test. If you've studied those academic vocabulary words, you won't be as stressed out on test day, definitely. So the fourth strategy is to focus extra attention on the sections that trouble you the most. So with most people I work with, certain sections of the TOEFL are more challenging and worrisome than others. So some of my clients may feel completely confident with the listening and the speaking sections, but they have trouble with the writing. Or others may find the writing to be easy, but they struggle with listening. So figuring out which sections of the test are going to be the most difficult is going to be a very smart strategy. Then you need to make the effort to focus more attention on those areas which make you the most uncomfortable. So the more exposure you have to these sections, the more comfortable you will ultimately feel at test time. This is not to say that you should completely ignore the other sections of the test that you are comfortable with, but you should focus a little bit more effort on the more challenging ones until you reach an acceptable level of familiarity. So a good rule of thumb that I like to use is to devote 2 study sessions for the difficult sections for every 1 study session where you focus on an easier one. And the last tip that we're going to cover today is, this one is probably very obvious, but you want to be sure to get some good sleep and eat well before you take the test. Now, it's very important nonetheless, even though it may seem very obvious. If you want to maximize your chances for success, you will need to have a good night's sleep and maintain good eating habits prior to taking the exam. Studies have repeatedly shown that those who maintain less than 6 hours of sleep per night are more prone to make minor errors during their waking hours and be more forgetful and have more negative issues with their short-term memory. So the ideal sleep length is anywhere between 6 and 8 hours per night, depending on the individual. Just make sure that you are maintaining this sleep cycle for at least several weeks prior to the exam. Now, it's also important to eat right before the exam. Keep in mind that you will not be allowed to bring food and drink with you to the testing center, so make sure that you eat a good meal before your test, as 4 hours is a long time to go without any food, and that's how long the tests typically take. So try to avoid foods that are packed with sugar as well as caffeine, as these have been shown to decrease focus and attention. You will need all of your focus and attention to dominate the TOEFL. So I hope that you found these tips helpful, and in the next part of this series, I will be focusing on strategies that you can use on the TOEFL test itself during test day to help you achieve your absolute best score. Thank you, and we'll see you again soon.